Hello, Professor Agnis Stibe. I'm really honored and excited to have you today with us in this new online meeting to create a platform for exchange and enlighten people across the world. So Professor Agnis Stibe, he is a 4 times TEDx speaker. He's an MIT alum. He's also a YouTube creator. He is globally recognized corporate consultant and scientific advisor at agnisstibe.com. He offers an authentic science-driven Stibe method and a practical tools for hyper-performance. He is currently the director of Artificial Intelligence Program and a professor of transformation at EM Normandie Business School in Paris. He is also adjunct professor of human-city interaction at the University of Oulu. And he is also a lead of Silicon Valley founded Transformative technology community in Paris. Professor Stibe Agnis, I have mainly 4 questions for you. So the first question is, what is your purpose in life?
I think that's the question that every human being would be, if every human being would be asking this question to themselves every morning. If they, I don't know, maybe people know that and they kind of can have a quick answer. And my experience shows that not me, not many others actually do have, let's say, a solid and very coherent answer to this question. And even as a researcher and scientist, although very applied, I ask this question also in my master classes, in my talks, just to see where the people are, whether they are lost in this vastness of information, distraction, everything, or they have very kind of coherent and systematic way how they see the relationship, their own relationship with themselves and with their lives. My purpose, and of course, I will, like people search for purpose, right? So this is part of our human nature. And the purpose for me, what I'm really passionate about is figuring out, that's my scientist mind speaking, figuring out, finding the actual algorithm of human change. And not only change that fluctuates up and down, but transformative change, which is like directional. It starts and it continues, and it can be smaller steps, bigger steps. It goes towards a new personal identity. And usually it's not that much about maybe learning and getting more. It's more about knowing themselves, like knowing ourselves, knowing myself, and then knowing how my biology, psychology, physiology is operating, and then using that knowledge to help myself, to increase the performance. And if I can do it with myself, and I can also think about that can work for many other people, and that's my passion, and that's my purpose. My purpose is understand the human change to the degree that finally we can inform technology design, and especially artificial intelligence, because we know rubbish in, rubbish out. So if we don't instruct the artificial intelligence how humans change, how can we expect it to amplify that effect? So my passion, understanding how humans change in the most effective way, translated into the understandable vocabulary for the people, and more importantly, for technology designers. So there's technologies that we are surrounded by, and we will be more immersed in this. We'll be knowing who we are, and will be helping us to be more happier, successful, and hyper-performing.
Yeah, I think this is amazing. This is why I have big admiration on you. The second question that I want to ask you is, what value you are bringing, and mainly to whom?
Again, let's start with a very essential understanding. And the right word that you were using is value. When I work with the business school students, whether those are undergrads, whether they're grad students, whether they're executive MBAs, oftentimes at the business school, when I ask, oh, what is the purpose of business? They say, oh, making money. I said, are you sure? And I ask, what is money? So value is the answer. And value is the answer for everything, for all transactions, relationships at work, relationships at home, relationships with your ice hockey team, whatever that is the value. The same applies to services and products. Therefore, if there is a company or team or a person not knowing what value do I bring and to whom, I think that's kind of a lost in unknown. Like the relationship with reality is quite poor. So therefore, the value that I bring based on what I answered in my first question. So the passion to investigate and understand, distill, and bring it to a useful state that people can have tools for transforming their own lives, get rid of their unnecessary biases or prejudices or thinking that is counterproductive. And also for the companies themselves, increasing the performance. KPIs, key performance indicators, it's very simple to measure. And usually the biggest drawback or the biggest barrier in companies to achieve hyper performance is not about technology, it's not about the process, not about the structure. We have been doing it for decades. It's how we can help our employees to get rid of some of their thinking, which is not contributing to performance, but doing exactly the opposite. So the value is not about, let's add more trainings and coaching and skills and practice, but instead the hyper performance, and that's the definition of hyper performance, is removing the obstacles from human minds. And there are a lot of tools that I have created. They are available on my YouTube channel, and they are applicable. Some of them are applicable for personal development. Some of them are applicable for the organizational development, and more essentially for societal development. And one of the works that I do is persuasive cities. So how even at the societal and communal scale, we can leverage technologies for our own benefit. So that's the value that I bring, and to the multiple beneficiaries at the same time.
Exactly, at multiple scales also.
Yes.
Okay, this very comprehensive and conclusion answer to the question. My third question is, I know you are in the field of artificial intelligence, and people always provide some arguments on why AI or AGI, artificial general intelligence, can't be a human. So my question for you, do you think that AI, or more generally AGI, wants to be a human-like entity in the future?
That's a very interesting question. And I think, first of all, if people find the answer to the first question, what's the purpose in their lives? I think then we can successfully look at these questions like you're just asking at the moment. So what would be the purpose of life of artificial general intelligence? I was raising this question, by the way, 2017, 5 years ago. There was Accenture internal magazine, and I was like, what's the purpose of innovation? And I was exactly pinpointing, if AI, whatever level it is, and let's assume it's AGI, artificial general intelligence, that kind of tells, or how the people translate that, at a human level, the capabilities and capacities are at the level of a human, again, average human, I guess. And if we ask, okay, most likely today, AI doesn't know the answer because AI doesn't have the self-awareness. I think I cannot judge for everything. I might not know something, but when we would be asking it, it's still so much having the bias of developer. We are developing these technologies. Yes, we have trained them to learn. We have trained through the machine learning, but then we also build the neural networks. But that is a similar reflection how our biological neural networks happen in the brain, but still it's a work in progress. And we can see it coming. I don't know how fast and how quickly. There are companies that including the chips in the brain, installing and then wiring to the neurons. It gets a higher speed internet to our brains, and that also gives us opportunity to learn better what's happening there. But I would say, if to answering your question as it was, AI most likely will still be quite biased based on the creator intention. Because getting rid of the creator intention, we know it's very difficult even for humans. Like kids grow up, they are influenced by the culture, by the parenting, by the school, and that follows through, and that kind of sits down in our neural networks in our brain. And similarly, it would be maybe something which is really different. The AI or AGI would be able possibly much faster and much quicker investigate which are these biases that it has, and we just delete them. Algorithmically, it's quite simple and possible. So I would say purpose will be still the one that we will be giving to it. And secondly, if we speak hypothetically, there might be some occasions when AI would possibly come up with some ideations. If the people would say, AI, AGI, please come up, what's your purpose? And of course, it will kind of seek for, okay, what can I access? Where can I find an existing intelligence? And I speak about unified intelligence. It's not about humans versus AI. That's another perspective I can answer in another question is we are on the same continuum. We are growing as a united intelligence instead of being separate. That's kind of a bias that many people have in the modern society. But I would say AGI would still have very human intention-driven purpose, whatever that is. And we would be responsible for what that is.
Yeah, totally. The creators will be responsible, and societies will be even more responsible in terms of how they are using the AI-driven technologies. My next question is which is related to the previous question. So how do you think that technology is being currently used to change the behavior of societies at planetary scale? And what are the implications of such changes? For instance, what I want to know is whether the technological advancement is currently developing a negative or a positive impact on a human existence as a whole.
Essential question. And we need to know the answer. And we need to have the comprehension of what is this relationship between humans and technologies. People who don't want to, or they don't know how to see clearer this relationship, let me try to clarify. Very simple. As we just had the conversation, we are the creators. Technology didn't create itself. Yes, there will be some progress in technology, and we know the factories, the robots are creating cars and stuff. That's fine, but there's still all the maintenance and everything is supported by humans. So therefore, technology gets more advanced. That's kind of obvious. And what I see, and that is my observation as a scientist and a practitioner, the more refined and the more sophisticated technology we develop, let's take AI as an example, the deeper and darker corners of human nature we discover. Because if in the old days we have a hammer or a knife, we can do good and bad. And it's just very local, very kind of context is very small. And the more sophisticated, more far-reaching technologies we develop, the bigger impact we can see achieving, good or bad. It also triggers deep in our DNA, in the memory as we evolve through dark ages, what can happen. And some people have this, let's say, dark sides be more prevailing in some questions, whether those are financial, whether those are territorial, whether those are, I don't know, anything else. Yes, I think that's a good part of it. We develop more refined technologies, and this serves as a huge mirror that very detailedly looks back on us and highlights and exposes that we have these dark sides. And we don't need to kind of, what's the word for that? Neglect that. We have it. It's just a question, how much do we allow to control who we are? And naturally, we societies, we have evolved to be more mindful, aware, and the technologies that are used by these mindful and aware people more than the other ones will create a better and more healthy society. So that's the relationship. We are constantly, through technologies, observing and seeing ourselves. That's it. So if there's a questions about ethics, these come back to ourselves and how we use and how we develop technologies.
Yeah, totally. Ethics should be the driven factors for technology, but unfortunately a lot of companies that they don't have ethics protocols. But again, this is not the topic of our discussion. At the lower level of transformation, or more generally inner transformation, one of the video you posted on your YouTube channel, you spoke about how the burnout is a fake problem. How do you think that PhD students can avoid burnout? And can you provide some tips to avoid such mental trap? So we want to provide a low-level tips how to avoid such mental illness.
Right. Question is very important. It also ties into the first one, knowing the answer, what's the purpose? And then also knowing through your later questions, you actually structured it very nicely, kind of goes through and it ties all together at this moment. And makes it very practical, and it should. Burnout needs to be understood as well. I would argue most of the people, when they're asked, okay, why others burn out if they haven't had this experience, or what were the reasons? And they usually say, well, a lot of work, a lot of homework, for example, a lot of research, or a lot of complexity with dealing with different softwares. And especially if you ask about PhDs, SPSS, or PLS, AMOS, all of these things. And they are not always easy. And data cleaning, data gathering, making sure, and then all the review process, if you speak scientifically to the journals, it's demanding. It's true, but it's the same thing. It's kind of the same pattern. Of course, you can have more better experiences or maybe less, but I would argue, and even if I say in a video that burnout is a fake problem, burnout is real, but the problem, how we see the problem is faked. And if we are not clear what's the origin of the burnout, then we are addressing a wrong problem. That's the same problem that can happen with products and services and companies in the markets. If they are asking some people, okay, would you like to use this service or product, and they don't do it accurately, they might get some insights, but they might not be true. And you create a product and service and the mobile app and nobody uses because it wasn't done properly. The problem wasn't understood. This is what I teach to students in a class, and this is teach in the matter classes for the organizations. I see a perspective that comes from a very natural existence, which is energy. And energies we can have of different kinds. And those who have remembered from, I don't know, high school or somewhere, there was this energy conservation law. You cannot create energy and you cannot destroy energy. If that's true, and that is true, then humans are the elements or the actors that can transform the energy from one state to another, like biological energy into creative outcomes or on the products and services. That means if we see that perspective clearly and we are transforming energies, it's a question, where do we take the energies? So we know if people don't eat for some time, they might get low performance because of the biology and physiology. But then again, other distractors can come in into this equation. Let me give you an example. People not always are satisfied with where they are, or with the relationship with the colleagues, or with the relationship with the job. They would say, well, they pay me well, but I don't like what I do. Here we have it. That means if people want to maintain that job or may maintain good relations with the PhD supervisor, but they don't like the topic, they will be pretending for some time. I don't know, I don't say everybody, but some people might. And that creates a necessity, creates a necessity to use some of your daily available energy to wear that, which I call a burnout mask. And the larger is the distance between who you really are, what's your purpose in life, what makes you satisfied, what makes you really thriving and fulfilled, and the acting mask that you are presenting, whether to your PhD supervisor or to your boss or to your colleague or to your relationships at home. The larger is that distance between who you are and the mask that you are presenting to everybody else, it requires energy to be maintained. And if the energy goes 20%, 30%, 50% into wearing the mask, how can we have enough energy to doing the tasks? How we can have enough energy to do our primary roles and deliver? And that's, I would argue, I'm not saying everybody, but I would really encourage everyone to pay attention to this perspective. And you would find more and more that's how it goes. And if that's the problem, then we come back to the question, what's the purpose in my life? What makes me fulfilled? And then if you align that and you don't allow yourself to wear the mask, then you're better off. And even sometimes I know in the PhD beginning, in the first year of PhD, it's not easy to know exactly what you're going to do, but then being all right with that and communicating that also openly and not hiding that you don't know exactly. You're kind of having your personality as it is instead of pretending, yeah, I kind of have an idea. That's the moment when you need to get the awareness and start, oh, no, stop. I need to be honest with myself first. And then I need also create honest relationship with everything else. So practically speaking, what it means, number one, just like with many things, practically awareness. I explained to you one very clear perspective, how everyone can catch themselves, whether what they say and what they do when they write in the email. And we can feel it. Instincts say us, okay, is it really me? Or am I creating a character right now? We know that. Instincts know this. And therefore, that's rule number one. Creating awareness, wherever we communicate, write something, say something, be this agent that is watching, whether that is really you or that's your avatar. And if that's the case, that's the moment when you stop and you start to say, well, is this the way I want to do? But if I go there, and there is a high likelihood of a burnout, if I stop and I just revert to myself and revise the strategies and tactics next time to be more aligned with myself when I communicate, the results will be completely different. Yes, there might be some situations, and it's unavoidable, some differences in opinions, maybe some even conflicts about how the things have to be done, but at least it will not burn your energy on a daily basis. Yes, that might have an extra energy at that moment of conversation, but that conversation will not let you slip in a long month of pretense. So that's the strategy.
So we need to avoid postures and be authentic.
That's the nature of humans.
The essence of existence.
I believe so. I would argue if people are in a good alignment with their own nature, which means internally and externally, and there's energy exchanges. Let me give you another practical example. People eat, usually, right?
Yeah.
The content is very, if you speak pragmatically, it's a molecular combination. And those molecules are doing something in our body. Our cells are dealing with them. I've gotten many times a question, what's good and bad? Even if we speak about healthy eating, when we speak about sustainable or resilient cities or well-being cities, it's always a question, oh, who's going to tell what's good and bad? And it always comes to the people making a decision. I say, well, how about looking at the core of who we are? And then people are like, what do you mean? Like my name, surname, gender, what? No, let's closer look. What is the beneficiaries of the food that you eat? These are biological cells. And of course, we have trillions of those. Mm-hmm. Neuron cells, skin cells, liver cells. Those are the beneficiaries. And whatever you do to them, you can ask a question. Does it bring more value to the cell, or it takes away the value? Just like abusing substances or smoking, for example. It's evidently clear it damages cells, so it's bad. And the same can go if you cut your arm. So cells need to use energy to heal themselves and make it again back in normal. If we stop damaging the cells are helping us to have more longevity. The same applies to everything. If we don't damage ourselves by allocating energy into wearing the mask, we get that energy to be creating something meaningful and valuable. And that happens on a team scales, organization scales, and societal scale. If you want the takeaways right now, the final ones, we can change our lives any way we want because neural networks in our brain are having neuroplasticity. And for those who want to prove they have it to themselves, you can try to start brushing your teeth with holding your toothbrush in the other hand. You will see in the beginning it's difficult, later it gets easier. But those who really want to get like a mastering of their own transformation, try to find algorithms online and solve the cube. And you will learn, it gets automated, and everyone has this capacity. So thank you for inviting to this podcast, and best of luck with whatever changes you would like to get in your life.